Hi everybody, welcome back for another video. This one is a little different than usual. I'm actually going to show you some things that I've been doing that have not worked well, have been experiments that failed. There's really two parts to this video. The first part, I want to talk about my new barrel, which was something that I highlighted in a past video. This is the barrel that is the Lapco 6-inch Freak barrel that has the inserts. This is my stainless steel insert. All of that is working really well, but I just wanted to point out one of the complications, and I want to show you, what happens when you have detents that are not optimal. So there's nothing wrong with these, visually looking, and I think I showed you previously that they work quite well with projectiles that were a little undersized for this 687 barrel. And but these detents are nothing fancy. They're just these standard rubber detents, and they're not that strong, and it doesn't take much to compress them. So what happened was I wanted to use my Grimberg Joules V2s, which have been bore matched or bore sized for being larger, and these are the ones that work really well in my 9-inch barrel, which is a little larger bore, much closer to the 687 like this. But I have different detents in that barrel. In this barrel, I have the stock detents that came with the Freak barrel. And so what I found, and I'm going to show you in the videos here, is that these detents are suboptimal. They just do not work well for the first two shots. And if you think about it, you have the detents here, and you have your ball. And if the ball is a little undersized for the detents, it'll fit nicely in there and they'll hold. But if the ball is a little too big for your detents, it's going to press the detents open more, and it's going to be more likely that when you charge it that you're going to get that another ball is going to push in, and you're going to end up getting a double shot. And that's what I found. I did two different sets with my Joules V2s that were bore size for being larger than average. And on each of the two examples, you'll see double shot, and then once the power comes down enough to a certain point, the double shots go away. And this is a common problem, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up. It's something that I dealt with way back in 2020 when I first started this process. FSC, TCP, they can be a little finicky at the beginning once you optimize, and then sometimes if you make any change, if you change the barrel or you do something to it, or even if you're power tuning, you have to go through a little trial and error, and that's just part of the process. So I wanted to share that with you because I don't want anyone to ever get the impression that these things are just plug and play. Anytime you make a change, you don't have to worry about the consequences. So you have to go through an iterative cycle. Make a change, test it, make sure it's functioning properly, understand why it's not working properly when it fails or it gives you a double shot, and you have to make some adjustments. So I'm going to be changing these detents, not in this video, but I'll be putting in some others, and I'll test them in a future video. So let's take a look at those, and then after that, I'm going to introduce a second problem or a second experiment that I tested, which is an interesting experiment, and I think it raises some questions that we can talk about at the very end about back pressure. And I just want to close with a little discussion about back pressure because it is very important. Anytime you use a larger bore projectile, or you put a choke on your barrel, or you use a longer barrel, you're creating back pressure. So here's my shooting now. I've got my TCP with my 6-inch barrel in, first shot coming up. And I don't know if you can tell, but that was a double shot. It was fairly obvious. And I just kept going. That first shot, I forgot to actually show you the number. But I just kept going through these shots here. This one's 256. I actually was a little fast there and a little low. You missed it. But the numbers are going down very much exactly as I would have expected. My TCP is very, very reproducible with this setting, and I don't change it much. I don't play around with it. I've got it tuned 9 turns in from flush. It always starts out with about one to two shots above 300, usually 2 shots, and then it works its way down in a very steady manner. And you've seen the graphs on my, if you haven't seen them, go back to one of my prior videos where I plotted it out on a graph. It's a very linear decrease. Now another double shot here. So now at that point I recognize that this is really an issue. It's not something that was just a one-time thing. I'm starting to get the double shot on that first shot, and then after that it usually is not an issue. So what's happening is I'm getting double shots with a better bore match on my Grimberg Joules. So I've had 2 shots here. You saw the chrono numbers. I'm getting double shots each time because the detents are not holding. So these are a lot wider, a lot better fit, but the detents in this new barrel are suboptimal. So I'm just going to fire the rest of these and we'll see what they look like. But I think these, as the power goes down, the double shots are less of an issue. So let's see. That's a single shot. That's a single shot. But the first 2 were double shots. 3. One more. All right. So that should be all the projectiles. So let's talk about this barrel a little bit. Now coming up here is the second test. It's a completely different experiment, so pay attention to this second half and the introduction where I talk about what I was trying to test. It didn't work out, but I think it's kind of informative sometimes to see a failed experiment, so that's why I'm putting it here. If you're not interested in failed experiments and you only care about the detents part, you don't have to watch, but I think it could be informative for many of you who are interested in testing little manipulations which might affect your power. And then stuffing the cotton in, and so we were having cotton, and then we were having a projectile, and then we were having a Joule. So I thought, every time I do that, when I pull the trigger, this thing feels like it has a really strong recoil, and I hadn't been using my chrono on those. So I thought, well, what happens if you just have a normal loaded with Grimberg Joules, 12 grams CO2, and you have a Joule in the breech, and then you use the cotton and you push it all the way in right up to the detents. Will the cotton provide any extra advantage? And the idea was, you have the Joule, the bore match is never 100%, but what happens if you have a bunch of cotton in front of it to provide extra coverage in terms of air? And my hypothesis was that this might allow more air to stay behind the Joule and increase the power. And that was what I wanted to test. And this is the video right here. So I'm first just charging up, getting ready to do the shots, and I'm going to chrono, and I'll let you see what we get here. Nothing that I haven't done before, but let's establish a baseline. All right, should be interesting. .308. So last time was 306. So that did not confer any extra power. 296, holding very well. 277, holding very well still. 256. 244. 227. Getting weaker, 216. And I lost track of how many rounds that is. I think there may be one more. And 199. I think that's probably it. All right, very similar results to without the cotton ball. So the conclusion obviously is cotton ball does not make any difference on that first shot in terms of power. I think we learned something there. Is that even with that, whatever air is going to go around the Joule or any other projectile that you're using, it is still going to go around, and then it's going to get into the cotton ball, and the cotton ball may separate. But that air, once it gets around, it's not helping accelerate the Joule, it's just helping accelerate the cotton ball. So I did feel a nice kick, and I did it, and I got really nice results. I feel very good that my barrel is fine, and I did it again, and I got very similar. In fact, I got better results than last time on shots 2 through 8. But shot number 1 was like dead on, very similar. I got 308 FPS with Joule V2. That's right exactly what I got last time. I think last time was 306. I was hoping that maybe with this in there, it would have some significant effect. It did not, but it just goes to show that there are some things that you can do to try to improve your barrel bore. This is one that did not work. Maybe I will come up with some other idea. Okay, so you can see there that did not work. I thought it was a reasonable test, but you can see that sometimes you do things and even if they don't make a lot of sense, you think it's worth testing. And I thought I would just share with you the fact that if you stuff something in there that has 0 weight, but yet it provided more kick. You know, when I shoot, just having that essentially weightless cotton ball in front of the Joule gives it a lot more kick, because it does create back pressure. The plug it's not a soft, pillowy cotton. When it's stuffed in there, it actually is quite tight, but it really is of insignificant weight. But it does provide back pressure, and it does fill in the void of the airflow, any blow-by, but it did not dramatically have any effect. It might have given a Joule. I really did not do a head-to-head and go back to my previous data. I just referred you to it in my discussion there. But it did not impact. But so one thing to keep in mind is anytime you're shooting and you get a nice felt recoil from one of these air guns, especially a pistol caliber, or not pistol caliber, but a pistol-sized air gun, do not assume that means, oh, this is shooting with more power and more joules. If you put a overweight projectile, a 20-gram projectile in here, and you shoot it, oh, you're going to feel it because that spring is going to come back and you're going to feel a recoil. But when you do your Joule calculation, you're not going to be impressed. If you use a larger or a heavier weight projectile, you do get a benefit. If you go from a 3-gram to a 6-gram to even up to a 10-gram, I do believe that there is a gradient of increased joules that you'll get per amount of weight. And there is a benefit that you get, but once you get above about 10 grams and up, it's a decreasing effect. And so increasing back pressure is a plus and a minus, but there's nothing free. And when it comes to physics, if you put in something that has no weight, you do not get the benefit, even though you might have a felt effect. So sometimes people are confused, and even on a few of my videos, I've shown where I had in a bunch of BBs and things like that, and I had a really nice kick, but I had no belief that actually translated to more power, but I was putting quite a bit of power out. The more back pressure you have, the louder it will usually be as well, because you just have more volume of air getting out a opening which is limited in size, and so you're gonna have more volume of noise that comes out. So just something to keep in mind. I know this is kind of a video where it's a little bit of a learning lesson, but I think sometimes we learn things that don't work, and we learn more from thinking things through and thinking about what's actually happening when we pull the trigger, as opposed to just blindly assuming that these things work and it's a black box. So the more you can learn about it and know, the better. And so I think you should know your system. I don't know that we all need to be experts on all different platforms, but the more you know about different platforms, the more you might recognize that that's a platform that you want to invest your time and money in. I chose this platform because I think it's user-friendly, and it's got a lot of advantages, and so that's what I like. But everyone, it's very subjective in terms of the platform that you choose for your situation and your level of ability to dissect and learn not the biology, but to learn the mechanistic interactions within that platform and know how it works and how it doesn't work, and understand the trial and error and the failure rate. So there's a lot to consider when you get into air guns and less lethal launchers. So never assume that these things are easy. There's always a learning curve, and you're always learning. So I'm going to leave it at that. Everybody take care. We'll see you in the next one.